Alright, Druids, let's go over the final class updates for Season 7. So, starting right off, we have skills. Hurricane, you can cast it while moving. As far as Raging Shred goes, we're getting a huge multiplier over here. So, previously, the Shred's third combo attack would be larger and it would deal some poison damage. Now, you still get that poison damage over 5 seconds, but it causes enemies to take 150x. Like, that's like your entire build right there in terms of like all the multipliers that you normally get. Like, this number is incredibly huge. Now, as far as I'm aware of, this is counting on a one-hander, right? So if we put this on a two-hander, we have 300x. 300x. I mean, lock in the Shred, man. Maybe this is the way to go ahead and actually build your character. Again, this number is just so astronomically huge that it may just simply, by numbers, enable some sort of poison druid build. Because on top of that, we can actually attack multiple times with Shred, which is another buff. I think they really want us to play like Shred and Companion for the Druid in Season 7. So next up we have Innate Bloodhowl. It used to give you some Spirit, but it gives you 25x increased damage until you shapeshift out of werewolf form. So I guess they kind of want us to stay in werewolf form because you get just 25x damage. That's like basically an aspect right there. And then with Grisly Rage, we get a 10x bonus here. And then at rank 5, casting Grisly Rage knocks down surrounding enemies for 5 seconds and deals 200% damage to them. Now, I'm going to be honest, at one point we had the rank 1 push for the Druid with the Infinite Grisly Rage. This had gotten nerfed, and I don't think this is going to fix it. The reason why it was so OP is you could have Infinite Grisly Rage, and then you could start stacking crazy amounts of crit. Unfortunately, that does not work anymore. It basically doesn't have the cooldown start until the duration ends. You should just kind of start as you would stay in the form. So I don't think this is going to fix it. Honestly, I would say, yeah, probably skip it out. You could probably still stay in Grisly form to get the guaranteed overpower. There's like the Hurricane, Cataclysm builds. Those are still probably going to be popular. In fact, just to give you guys a reference, what was the best Druid build last season, if we go ahead and check this out? Well, it's not actually Hurricane. It's pretty much all Cataclysm. I don't know if we've seen any like other builds. There's one Boulder over here, but for the most part, like the top tier build, the one that's going to give you the most DPS, as far as I'm aware of, is still going to be Cataclysm. But we'll see if certain other things change. Like I said, like I was surprised seeing it. They originally had it, okay, here, we'll give it a 30x multiplier. No, it wasn't enough, so 150x. Again, you put that on a two-hander, this number just goes crazy. But yeah, skip out on the Grisly Rage. Lacerate, they've been trying to buff this so many dang times. The problem with this is I think the casting animation takes too long. They have actually buffed up a bunch of the ultimates, but I think the cast duration of this just takes so long to get to that like damage breakpoint that it may not be good. Take it with a grain of salt. Like I said, with Diablo 4, you never know what's going to be good. But as far as this goes, yeah, I don't see this being like, oh man, lock in Lacerate. I'd say if you want to play an ultimate Cataclysm, you get the big damage from the Monoric Ring. It's just too good. Anyways, Cataclysm, at rank 5, we get to slow surrounding enemies, so they're affected by crowd control. Cool. And then Petrify, it gets to reset all of your non-ultimate cooldowns. And then the following skill tree upgrades, which directly deal damage, will now scale up their damage with increased skill ranks of the base skill. So Fierce Claw, Innate Earthen Bulwark, Raging Shred, and then next up, with the passes, we have Lupine Ferocity. Previously, every third werewolf would critically strike and deal 100% increased damage. And then now, every third werewolf skill critically strikes, and then werewolf's critical strikes deal 75x increased damage over here. Next up, with Toxic Claws, we have the critical strikes with werewolf skills deal 12% of their base damage as poison damage. Then now, critical strikes with Shred and Lacerate deal 24% of their base damage as poisoning damage over 4 seconds. Okay, so before you would run certain things to make it so you would count as a werewolf skill, and then you would get this bonus damage over there. Now, though, it's only going to be for Shred and Lacerate. So there is kind of a nerf here, so keep that in mind. But technically, if you're playing it properly, because it's supposed to probably be like, you know, meant for werewolves, not for like the bear builds that you would, or any other skill that would count and gain the tag as werewolf. So yeah, you only have really 2 options over there, but you do get double of it. So again, with that 300 multiplier plus this, think about that. Then we have Heightened Senses. So when shapeshifting, Werebear grants 3% damage reduction, and Werewolf grants 2% movement speed, while both bonuses persist as long as you are in either animal form and are doubled while both are active. They're lost after 3 seconds in human form. So now, when shapeshifting Werewolf Werebear grants 3% damage reduction, and Werewolf grants 3% movement speed. So there's an increase of 1%. Now, both bonuses persist as long as you're in either animal form, and they're lost after 3 seconds in human form. So I guess it still has like basically the same ending over there. And then we have Charge Atmosphere. Previously, every 14 seconds, a lightning bolt hits a nearby enemy, which deals some damage. Now, every 14 seconds, a lightning bolt hits a nearby enemy and it deals 45% damage. And your lightning bolts deal 10% increase. Oh, so you just got a 10% increase. And then with Spirit Boons, the Spirit Boons unlocks reduce from 100 to 60 per animal. This is a really nice quality of life change. Also, since this ties into the Spirit Boon thing, if you have completed like your class quest, you never have to do it anymore. However, you can still do it and you get this new like cache that is going to give you a bunch of like tempering recipes, some legendaries. I still think it's kind of worth doing. Depends on how like fast we're getting legendaries, but it could be a good source if you wanted to try to get some like tempering recipes earlier on. Next up, the Spirit Boons are getting changed up over here. So previously with Prickle Skin, as far as I'm aware of, no one really made Thorn's Druid. So now we get to deal 5% increased damage to enemies for 5 seconds after they attack you. Okay, cool. It's not too bad, especially... I'm not sure if this can like infinitely stack. If you can get infinite stacks, I mean, you could probably do some cool stuff. Not that there's any like super challenging thing, but just for memes, maybe you can sit there in a Lilith boss fight, take so much damage, and then you can like one-shot it. But yeah, as long as this could refresh, it's kind of cool. But I don't know if I would say a lot of people would want to take this. But next up we have Gift of the Stag. So it used to give you 40 max spirit. Now you get 40 max spirit, and then you also gain 5 spirit every second. So this is actually pretty good. That's basically like a pretty nice roll, like where you roll it on your chest piece and stuff. I like this. Great change for the Druid. Especially on the earlier game, I think everyone's going to probably want to take this, so you just don't have that resource problem. Then with Eagle, with the side talent, we used to gain 15 crit strike chance. Now we gain 15 crit strike chance and 15x increased lucky hit chance. Cool. And then with Wolf, we used to get 15% chance to restore 30 spirit. Now we have a 15% chance to fully restore your spirit. Wow, that's a pretty big, nice upgrade there. And then with Snake, with Obsidian Slam, every 10th kill will cause your next Earth skill to overpower, and every 6th cast will cause your next Earth skill to overpower. So this is a buff and a nerf, because before, well, if you're killing a bunch of like trash mobs, again and again, you could always just keep on overpowering. It's pretty much for like the Werebear, pulverized builds. But it is a nice change because overall, the main problem that the Werebear like overpower build had was like when you went into like a boss, you simply just didn't have damage. So this is like, it is a buff and a nerf. Next up though, with Snake, previously dealing lightning damage has a chance to cause the target to emit static discharge, which would deal some sort of damage to surrounding enemies. Now dealing storm damage also applies an additional 20% poison over 5 seconds. Lucky Hit, dealing poison damage, has a 1% chance to summon a lightning bolt on the target that deals 120% damage. Okay, cool. Now, the reason why this is actually pretty good, and if you're wondering, like, why would you want to put, like, Storm and then the poison, there is a thing, I want to say, I think it's called Heightened Sense. It's a legendary node that almost every Druid player takes because it's like, if there's, like, 3 poison enemies, there's, like, a 20x multiplier. That's why a lot of people would, like, run something to get poison damage in the build. I think it was, like, when you use a werewolf skill, you can, like, you have a chance to poison or something. But basically, you use that so you can proc that. I think is it heightened malice or something like that. It's something that has to do with one of the legendary nodes. As far as legendary aspects, the Blurred Beast. I think this is the thing that I was talking about. Okay, so while dashing, Shred seeks out nearby poison enemies, and you get 75x increased damage. Now, how it works is Shred deals more damage, so you already get that increased damage. So, well, it's lowered by 5%, but it has a 33% chance to land an additional strike up to 4 times. So as far as I'm aware of, this basically rolls at 33% chance 4 times. And if it's rolling 4 times on average, yeah, it's a pretty big DPS increase, especially when you look at the other thing where Shred gets 150x on a one-hander. You put 300 and then it can attack twice. I mean, that's 600x. Well, it doesn't really add up like that, but you get the idea. It's a big number, and hopefully we can see a return of this. This was one of the strongest builds back in the day. I think at one point, I think Elon was running this one. Shoutouts to him when he was grinding the Druid. But yeah, this is actually pretty cool. I think this is one of my favorite things. I think it was back when people used to play Andariels with this build. Really cool stuff. And again, this almost seems like they're returning all of the fan favorites for this season. So that's a cool update for this season. If you had like a favorite build and got nerfed, well, a lot of times they're buffing them back now. So Unsatiated, previously after killing an enemy with Shred, you would gain 20 Spirit, and your Werewolf skills would do up to 40x increased damage when cast above 50 Spirit. Now, after you crit an enemy with Shred, you gain 15 Spirit, so it's a nerf. But while at 100 Spirit, Werewolf skills deal 20 to 40x increased damage until you go below 30 Spirit. Okay, so that basically, I would say it's kind of a nerf in a sense, because like as long as you just maintain that Spirit. But this one is until you go below 30 Spirit. Either way, like I mean, you could say okay, that's a little bit of a buff, but overall, I'd say it's a small like little slap on the wrist. Next up, Virulent changed from utility to offensive. And then previous, when Rabies would infect an enemy, you would reduce its cooldown. This cooldown reduction is tripled when infecting elite enemies. Now, when Rabies infects an enemy, you get to reduce its cooldown by the same amount, and tripled when infected elite enemies. And then you get to deal up to 50x increased damage to enemies affected by Rabies. They've been buffing Rabies for so long. I don't know, is this the season finally where Rabies becomes good? I don't know. I'm looking at the numbers, I'm saying Shred is just going to be the better choice here. But Runeworker's Conduit, previously your critical strikes with storm skills that you cast charge the air around you, cause lightning bolts to hit enemies in the area, and then our lightning bolts would deal 20 to 40% increased damage. Now, our crits with storm skills cause lightning bolts to periodically strike close enemies for 3 seconds, each dealing lightning damage. Our lightning bolt damage is increased by 15% for every 100 willpower that you have. Okay, so since we have something to stack, and getting greater, affixes on specifically willpower could be something to look at. If you look at a lot of the like builds that were shown off, a lot of the builds for the top tier builds would run like percent willpower, so then you could really get a huge amount of willpower. Maybe you get like that 3,000 willpower is something that some people might be able to achieve, and again, you do a crazy amount of damage. I'm hoping that this could be a cool thing, because I like stacker builds. There's a bunch of those in Path of Exile, and I think they are fun because it kind of gives you something infinitely scale. And I'm so glad they're not saying maximum amount. Just let the player go as high as they want. Obviously, there's a limit anyways, because the game doesn't give you infinite amount of like ways to get willpower, but I like that. And then the Tempest Roar, they changed flat damage willpower to percent willpower. Ooh, okay, that's pretty cool. I really wish that like as far as Tempest Roar goes, I wish they made it so that you can convert your skills. It's really nice that Spiritborn is like, you just go to Spirit Hall and you're like, all your skills are Centipede, all your skills are whatever. But like, out of all the classes, Druid needs that more than anything, because they have so many things that want you to be werewolf, werebear, they want you to nature, earth, they want you to do like everything, but like the game just doesn't really let you do it. But Spiritborn, it's like one checkbox, right? With this, you're sacrificing your helmet slot, which is like, it's a really big sacrifice because there's Harlequin in there, so you get the extra cooldown. There's like the helm spot, and especially with like Air of Perdition, like there's so many good helms in the game, in the mythic department, and you're just forced to kind of not be able to run them, unfortunately. But next up, Menorach Ring. So while Cataclysm is active, you gain Unlimited Spirit and get 100x damage. And now you gain Unlimited Spirit and deal another 100x damage, and then Cataclysm receives your Lightning Bolt's benefits. Okay, cool. This is already like the top tier build, and if they just give it extra damage, I mean, even better, right? Shapeshifting Finesse, they remove Werewolf attack speed, and then they remove Werewolf crit chance, and they added damage while fortified. Okay, so I guess that's kind of a loss there. And then Paragon. Oh, this is the thing I was talking about, Heightened Malice, where everyone played it. So while there are 3 or more poison enemies, you get 45 increased damage. Now, while a poison enemies nearby, you get 35x damage plus an additional 5 for each poison enemy, up to 4. That's awesome. You want to know why this is so good? The problem with this is that Druids would have some problems with bosses. Again, if you go to like Pulverize, that had problems with bosses, but now this just gives you 35x. So I think every single build would probably want to fit in poison now, especially since the condition of activating that multiplier, because you get 35 an additional 5 for each additional poison enemy. So yeah, I mean, overall, if you look at this, it's just straight up a buff, again, specifically for bosses, which was a great change. I'm glad they noticed that. Survival Instincts, previously while you were in a werebear form, you get to deal increased damage up to 60% for every 1% difference in your current life percent between you and the enemy. Now, while in werebear form, you get to deal 30x increased damage, or 45 when you are at full life. And then you have increased overpower damage for every 25x for every 1% difference in current life percent, and 4 to 5 life percent between you and the enemy. Okay, so I'm assuming that this would be like overall a net buff, because you get to do 1% increased over here from life percent and fortify, so does that mean that it can activate 2 times, or is it like you have to add them together? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Next up, we have Ancestral Guidance, which is a legendary node. Now, this, just as a heads up, guys, just as a tip, unless it's still bugged, it does not work with Cataclysm because it doesn't ever count you as spending the spirit, even though it gives you unlimited spirit. Although it still works with the Ring of the Starless Skies. So, anyways, after spending spirit, you get to deal increased damage, and then now, after spending spirit, you get to deal increased damage for 5 seconds. Same thing before. And then your ultimate skills deal increased damage per spirit when cast. Okay. I mean, if you have that, therefore, you might be able to... I mean, that's pretty cool. So you can start stacking a bunch of spirit and just get a huge bonus over there, and still get value out of the Cataclysm with the ring, because, again, it gives you unlimited spirit. So the reason why you wouldn't take it is because it didn't work. I don't know if this was a bug or if that's intended, but like I said, it works with Ring of Starless Skies, and Starless Skies is like when you're spending a resource anyways. But Keeper Glyph, they increase the non-physical damage to another 5x there. Territorial, you get damage reduction from close, another 5. Undaunted, increased damage reduction will fortify by another 5. And then with the Werewolf Glyph, you get to increase werewolf damage from this amount. So it's basically like a 50%-ish, a little bit lower than 50% like buff on that. So cool. So another buff to werewolf. So it looks like they really want us to play some sort of like poison variant of Shred. And I think that Cataclysm will still probably be a pretty good build if you guys want, you know, just some things to think about. There is also a bunch of companion like buffs because they're making all of the summons tags gain all of your stats. So even though it wasn't really mentioned here in like the update here, this is the final patch notes. I would consider looking at companion druids. I would also definitely suggest you guys look at the Shred Druid, especially with all those crazy number buffs. But anyways, if you plan to play Druid, what build do you plan to play? Let me know down below. But that's going to wrap things up. If you guys enjoyed it, drop a like, sub if you're new, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.